folks, so it's been a while since I've done a Natalie's sofa episode. I've been busy moving house and been in my house now for about a month now, but let's get on to what I wanted to talk about in this video today, which is obviously we're in a new year and Fuji have been touted to be releasing several new cameras this year. I don't know which. Now, there's two cameras I suspect that will come out this year, could be wrong, which would be a replacement for the X-H2S and a replacement for the X-T6. X-T6? X-T5, which would be an X-T6. I'm ahead of myself. But I want to focus on the replacement for the X-T5, because that's the camera I've been using for the last 2 and a bit years. I got it when it first came out, and I had an X-T4, and the X-T4 was more video focused, and I like photography, but I like a camera to be a true hybrid. I like it to be as good as video as it is at photography. And I'm going to come on to a controversial topic, which is the screen. Very controversial with Fuji people. And right at the end, I do want to talk about a little bit what I've been up to. I've been doing some pano photography with my drone, and some aerial videography with it. And I nearly lost the drone, couldn't land it, icing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about icing. And you've got to be mindful when you're flying in freezing fog with a drone. But more about that at the end. Let's get on to the main focus of this talk. My first point, which is the things I'm disappointed with, I'm going to go over, because overall it's a very nice camera. It's tactile, it handles well, but so have Fuji cameras since the X-T1, X-T2, X-T3, X-T4. They're all very similar design, and I love that design. I love the tactile controls. I love using them in manual mode because it's very easy to see what you're doing. So the sensor, the 40 megapixel, I love the fact that it has a good resolution, but because you're cramming 40 megapixels into a very small area, I've always struggled somewhat with it in low light situations or high ISO situations. It's capable of some very good photography, but I've found that the old X-Trans 4 26 megapixel sensor can actually outperform it in low light. And sometimes maybe a sensor which has, say, 33 megapixels might be better. So what would we put in it? I don't know. I don't think Fuji are going to produce a new sensor this year. I would like to think they would. And if they did, 33 megapixels I think will be the sweet spot. I think stepping back, getting those pixels up to bigger pixels would be a better option. Or in some respects to have a mode that let the camera use large pixels, but then 40 megapixels, if it was combining the pixels, would only operate at 10 megapixels in that mode. So I'd like to see a new sensor. If not a new sensor, I'd like to see the sensor from the X-H2S, the stacked one. I think that would be a really good sensor to drop in to the new X-T6. I'm quite happy with 26 megapixels. I'd love a fast readout sensor, which is good for photography and cinematography. The screen, the controversial bit. Very controversial with people, this. But I have to say, I like the X-T4 screen. I've always liked flip-out screens. I love them because you can get low to the ground. I can use them on an L bracket, never have a problem. Die-hard photographers, sorry, I'm not trying to upset you, but you guys just do not like flip-out screens. I love doing video as well as photography, and I love a flip-out screen. I just find them so much more usable. I'd always said a compromise would be a 3-way tilt and flip screen where the screen has the ability to flip up and to flip out and flip up, and I think there's a couple of cameras had that. The X-T100, very budget camera, had that kind of screen. And I think, what are the Lumix full frame cameras had that? I think the S1. And Sony had it on one of their cameras. But not many cameras have that because it's quite a complex screen to make and it'll break easily. But sorry, Fuji purists, I think the X-T6 at the very least should have 2 versions. I'll come on to that later. And should have a flip out screen. Or at least, like we've got XH2, XH2S. We've got 2 versions of that camera. One photocentric, one videocentric. You could argue with the higher resolution sensor. But it's a very tricky point. Please make your thoughts known in the comments below. I'm ready to take them on the screen. I'd like to see a full HDMI port because the little one's really fiddly and they break easily, and the camera's big enough to have a full HDMI and people use them for video. I'd like to see compact flash and internal ProRes to that end with the camera. I think it's about time that the X-T6 would have a compact flash port, and I really hope Fuji put that in. And I've talked about the sensor just before. As I say, I think it should have either a new 33 megapixel sensor, which I think is a sweet spot for APS-C. I wouldn't really want to go high because of the noise problems. Or if they wanted to save money somewhere, I would love them to put the stacked XH2S sensor in the new X-T6. I think that would be a good match. I think 26 megapixels is quite adequate for most people, and what they do for their photography. I've found the 40 megapixel files, while nice to have, just fill up my storage faster, and yeah, I can crop in. That's nice, and that's where a 33 megapixel might come in. But again, something to do. What do you guys think? Would you prefer more megapixels and put up with the noise performance? Or do you want something different? And one of the other points I thought was worth raising was that a lot of people say that because it's a photocentric camera, because of its retro design, there shouldn't be a video version of it. Well, I'm filming this on the XM5, and while it may be a PASM dial camera, it's vintagely styled. I don't see why we can't have 2 versions of the X-T6, X-T6S and X-T6. The X-T6 itself is a photocentric version with maybe the 26 megapixel sensor, and the X-T6, or the S rather, would be the videocentric. The X-T6 would be photocentric, so it might have a higher megapixel count. It's nice though, because what would happen is you'd buy one camera and go, oh, but I'd like to have that photograph feature. And on the one hand, you're trying to appease people, but on the other hand, you're just making it so that people have to buy 2 cameras because they can't get all the features in one camera. Lumix did that with the S5 II and the S5 IIX, and in the end I ended up with a S5 IIX because it had the features, whereas the S5 II, you could argue, was a bit more photocentric because it lacked a lot of the video features. And I don't want to see Fuji go down that route. And that's basically the criticism I would have levied at it, or what I would like to see improved from my perspective. But I'd love to know what you guys would want to see from an X-T6. Please do pop it in the comments below. What you think of my thoughts. If you don't like the idea of things like the flip screen, why don't you like it? You're allowed to mention L brackets as well. I was using an L bracket today with a flip screen camera. No problem. Just did. Anyway, I thought I'd just go and finish off. I've been doing went out in the mist this morning, freezing fog. I wanted to get some moody shots. Went to an old ruined castle nearby where I live. And I forget its name, I'll bring it up on the screen. And I had the drone sort of doing orbits around it. And it kept sort of stalling a little bit. It was struggling to move, and I was having difficulty controlling the altitude a few minutes up. I was like, what's going on here? So I finished off getting the shots I wanted, and you can see probably from watching the video footage, it's a bit jerky in places, which is not normal. I got a nice 360 and a 180 pano, which I think came out beautifully though. And after about 15-20 minutes airborne, the battery was down to about 40%. I brought it into land. And it came down to about 7 meters altitude. Then it just stopped. I'm like, it won't come down. And I should have taken a picture when I landed it, but I eventually sort of walked onto a higher bit of ground and moved the drone over that and sort of stretched my hand up to reach towards the drone. And slowly it started, very slowly it said landing, and then it very, very slowly started to descend, and then it saw my hand. And one of the things I noticed is that it kept seeing obstacles where there were none. It was getting confused by the fog. And when the rotors stopped, there was ice underneath them and on the leading edge. And when you do your drone training, they don't teach you about icing, which surprises me. I think it's something that should be included. They don't, when you do the basic drone training, there's nothing in there about flying conditions apart from wind. They talk about wind, but I wanted to get those shots, but I didn't realise that the ice would build up on something spinning so quick. And the reason the drone had been struggling is because it was unable to change the pitch of its props to ascend and descend or to steer because they were covered in ice. It had iced up just like icing on a plane, but it has no way of clearing the ice. So there's a word of warning for you. I got some lovely footage, got some lovely photographs, but it iced up. So if you're going to fly in fog, be mindful of the dew point. And of course it was around about -2 where we were. And I didn't expect, I'd heard of icing on wings, but I didn't know that rotary aircraft could suffer from icing as well. Call that my ignorance, but I've done my drone training and qualification and it's not covered in the basic one. Maybe in the more advanced drone courses, maybe I should look into one of those, but I now know. I looked it up straight away after when I got home and found that you've got to be careful about not just the wind, of which there was none, but the temperature. And that's why the drone kept seeing ghosts when it was up there, because I think bits of ice were maybe flying off the props and getting spotted by the camera sensors, or it was whipping up the vapour in the air, which was like freezing. And it was, the camera kept seeing ghosts. It kept going, oh, there's an obstacle, oh, there's an obstacle, when there wasn't. So it wasn't ideal to fly, or at least fly for very long periods of time. And I could basically, I should have used the sensor cameras to see whether they were steamed up, because you can switch to the cameras that the drone uses to sense what's around it. And I probably would have been able to see whether they were having problems or whether something was awry. So there's a little tip for you. Be mindful when you're flying a drone in icy conditions that it doesn't ice up, because the worst case scenario is it falls out the sky. Anyway, folks, I'll see you all later. Sorry I haven't done a video for a while, but I've been very busy moving in and unpacking, and hopefully should get back to some more normality with a new video coming out soon. So, I'll see you all around, and remember, if you got value from the video, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Bye!